Welcome to the discussion series number 3. Now we'll be discussing about the text Virtue is Knowledge by T.J. Levine, which is based on interdisciplinary readings. This text is basically related with ancient Athens. The text starts with a quote from Plato about conducting of ruling class of his ideal republic. Then he presents the admiration that the world has laid towards Plato as the greatest philosopher, fathers of Western philosophy, son of Apollo. Here Apollo means he has multi-talents, god of music, god of poetry, art, oracles, archery, plague, medicine, sun, light and knowledge. A sublime dramatist, a majestic greatest of all moralist and social philosopher of all time. Let's talk about something about Plato, what he is in general.
He focused his considerable talent on the subjects of politics and the writing of tragedy and other forms of poetry. His affiliation with Socrates, one of the founders of Western philosophy, changed the course of his life. The destruction of the Peloponnesian War left Plato in a troubled position. Plato welcomed the restoration of democracy, but his mistrust was deepened some 4 years later when Socrates was tried on false charges and sentenced to death. Plato was present at the trial, as we learn in the Apology, but was not present when the poison was given to his master, although he describes the scene in clear and touching details in the Phaedo. His productive years were highlighted by 3 voyages to Sicily. The first trip to southern Italy and Syracuse took place in 388 and 387 BC, when Plato met Dionysius I. Dionysius was then at the height of his powers in Sicily, for having freed the Greeks there from the threat of Carthaginian rule. When Plato returned to Athens, he began to teach in the Gymnasium Academe. He later acquired property nearby and founded his famous academy. Plato had begun to write the Dialogues, which came to be the basis of his philosophical teachings. The Apology and Crito stand somewhat apart from the other works of this group in that they deal with historical events, Socrates' trial and the period between his conviction and execution. Plato's own great contributions begin to appear in the second group of writings, which date from the period between his first and second voyages to Sicily. Socrates is again the main character in the Republic, although this work is less a dialogue and more of a long discussion by Socrates of justice and what it means to the individual and the city-state. Plato's third and final voyage to Syracuse was made some time before 357 BC. He tried to influence the young Dionysius II. Plato was unsuccessful and was held in captivity, but eventually released. Plato died in 347 BC, the founder of an important philosophical school which existed for almost 1,000 years. His system attracted many followers in the centuries after his death, and resurfaced as Neoplatonism, the great rival of early Christianity.
So let's go further. Alfred North Whitehill, History of Western Philosophy, he believes that philosophy is only the series of footnotes. Footnotes mean extra piece to Plato. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, Plato is philosophy and philosophy is Plato, in the sense that Plato has a lot of knowledge about philosophy. Out of Plato come all the things that are still unwritten, debated among men of thoughts. When you talk about historical situation, born in Athens serves about 427 BC at the end of Golden Age, rules of Perseus from 445 to 431 BC. When you talk about Athens more, Athens is considered the first democracy in the world with respect to human rights, equality and rule of law, justice to all citizens, substantial development in literature, architecture, philosophy, history, culture, science, medicine. However, Athens was tragically defeated by Sparta in 404 BC. And this you can see the ancient Athens, which were really beautiful and inspiring which was developed in that area, which is now the model state across the world. Talking about historical situation, the beautiful state was defeated by rule of 30. The rule and 30 was anti-democratic aristocratic group of Athenian friends, which in turn followed by the restoration of democracy and the trial of those, including Socrates, who seemed to be against democracy. Many democratic nations in the West have been inspired by the democratic system of Athens and feel sorry for its tragic defeat by Sparta. Athens, we can see the craft, which is a beautiful city around the world, is still today. When we talk about Plato's life, he came from a noble and aristocratic family that has developed bitterness towards the democratic government. For his failure and his close relatives, even uncle and cousin, supported counter-revolution and the rule of 30. Socrates supported rule of 30. Remember, Socrates supported rule of 30, for which he had to face trial after the restoration of democracy. Regarding the trial and death of Socrates, there were several charges on Socrates, saying that he was empty, speaking against the gods, corrupting the youth of Athens, and his support to counter-revolution for the losing of Athenian democracy. Though the Athenian government only wanted to frighten Socrates by giving a death, by thus saying he would get the death penalty, but he accepted it, ignoring all the rules of an escape, and drank hemlock, which is a poison, because he didn't want to get his idea or philosophy to be defeated. There are 5 major points which talks about Socrates' philosophy. The first is true wisdom, which consists of knowing what you know nothing. Second is improvement of soul, the care for wisdom and truth. Nobody or money and its highest good. Third is sin against God, because he believed that God sent him to Athens as a Gaddafi. Fourth is the virtue of knowledge, and the fifth is his idea about ethics, what we call rationalistic moral philosophy. There are several interpretations regarding the death of Socrates. First, people said Plato is like a march or like a rest. Philosophers said the hostility of masses towards philosophy and philosophers. Political scientists believe the power of state over individual for its freedom and inquiry. Sociologists say defense of aristocracy against Athenian democracy. Plato's late life, after the death of Socrates, he left Athens, visited Syracuse, met Dion, impressed him with his philosophy, and sold to slavery of the king and Syracuse and rescued his friend. He returned to Athens and established an academy, our first junior medieval and modern English today. After 20 years, Dion invited him, and he went to Syracuse, tried to put his philosophy into practice with Dionysius, but he got failed. And later life he returned to Athens, continued his teaching and writing, and died at the age of 80, which is in 348 BC. In the book, The Republic, Plato offered a blueprint of ideal government of society, how it should be. Thanks.